you feel about how the American government has been speaking publicly about things since last night?
I think the public posturing has been good. I have been wondering whether the non-direct involvement was initially to keep NATO Article 5 on the table. For those of us who don't spend all of our time reading about NATO Article 5, it's the collective defense provision. That doesn't kick in if there is an attack initiated by a NATO member. But if an attack is made on a NATO member, and this was used after 9/11 to invoke the collective defense after the U.S. was hit on its own soil. My initial thought was if the U.S. is indeed so supportive of this, why didn't they join in with some of their unique capabilities, some of the B-2 bombers, some bunker busters, some MOABs that could penetrate deep into the Natanz or Fordo underground facilities? I think what we've seen is a great deal of support to the point where France, which has not been particularly friendly, in terms of their rhetoric in the last couple of years, but certainly in the last few months, came out to help try to swat down some of these ballistic missiles. Um, I think the posturing has been good. The question that I continue to have is why there's any mention of still engaging with the regime. The regime has exposed itself as a nefarious bad actor. All pretense is gone. So when you start to talk about things like coming to the negotiating table, what is all this for? Eh? This action on Israel's part is because of a firm belief that no matter what agreement would ever be agreed to by these particular players, it wouldn't be held to because they're bad actors. They mean nothing but harm. And so I'm not really sure. I find it quite problematic when I see, oh, well, maybe they'll come to the table now. No, right? There's a war going on for a very particular reason. So I'm curious as to whether it's strategic, uncertainty, as to whether it's to sow the doubt as to what the U.S.'s involvement is going to be. But I think from a political perspective, Trump is someone who's incredibly adept at triangulating the political situation at home, and particularly with his base, which is quite torn right now. His base did not want this. His base does not like direct U.S. involvement and feared being pulled into this conflict. I think a lot of those fears have been proved incorrect. Right? There's not World War III going on. The U.S. hasn't been pulled into some conflict that thousands of people, like Tucker Carlson said, thousands of American servicemen were going to die and everything. Like it just hasn't happened. But it does seem like as Israel's strategic wins mount, the likelihood of more direct U.S. involvement starts to mount as well as it becomes safer to kind of enter. So I think, right now, I think I'm very comfortable with where it's at. And I would have to think that Bibi probably would not have undertaken such a dangerous gambit here because indeed it is a very dangerous gambit. Right? I think we'll get into this a little later if we have time as to
Yeah.
what Israel knew about the regime's plans. There are plans. I'd like to talk about them later. There were plans that were uncovered, actual attack plans with Hamas and Hezbollah to wipe out Israel. It wasn't just talk. They were actual formulated plans. And so I think, this was a particularly dangerous gambit, and I don't think Bibi would have undertaken it without some sort of sense that the U.S. would at some point join.